All right, hello everybody. My name is Anthony, and today we are going to be talking about materials inside of Unreal Engine Fortnite Creative or Unreal Editor for Fortnite Creative. Materials are essentially going to be like the covering for surfaces. So as you can see right now, this has a material which is described here in the properties panel as a basic shape material. It's just the default material that comes with things, and essentially it's like the way textures are mapped in. There's so much you can do with materials. It's really one of the things that takes level design from kind of cool to like at a higher level, and you can really create just a lot of really cool things with materials. So that's what we're going to go ahead and look at today. So let's go ahead, and as you can see, to open up the content drawer, you're just going to click that just like so. And here's all my content. I'll go ahead and delete this from the last video. Cool. So as I said before, the material is just a simple component that exists underneath pretty much every static mesh actor. You can edit that in the details panel here. And let's go ahead and look at how you would create a new material. So to create a new material, you're simply just going to right click here and you're going to select material just like so. And as you can see, it's for the visual look as it's described here. Whenever you create a material, typically you want to prefix it with M underscore and then whenever you want to call your material. This just keeps your materials nice and organized and makes sure that if you ever need to find a material later, it's very, very easy to find. So I'll call this tutorial. But so now to open this material, you're going to go ahead and double click on it, and it's going to open what is known as the shader graph. Now, I've dealt with many different shader graphs across many different game engines, and they generally have this same sort of setup. Let's talk first about what a shader is. Essentially, whenever your object interacts with the world, there's going to be a whole lot of things that the object is going to do here. So, for example, the object may reflect light. The object may have a certain amount of light pass through it. The object's obviously going to have a color, maybe a texturing, right? The object is going to have maybe like bumps and things like that of that nature. And essentially, the way you can customize all of that is by giving the shader information, right? And the shader is this right here. This is essentially the information that tells the game engine, in this case Unreal Editor for Fortnite, how this material interacts with this world. And although this is the main shader that's used, there are actually many, many, many different shaders. You can create a shader for eyes, you can create a shader for a clear coat material. As you can see, that changed the color a little bit. Again, there's quite a few shaders here. Not going to get into all the shaders and all the things you can do here. The default lit one, meaning default shader node for a lit environment, generally looks like this. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of little plugins, and each one of these will describe something about the world. So for example, base color would describe the overall color. Metallic, specular describes how much light is going to pass through versus get absorbed. Reflectiveness describes how shiny or not shiny it is, right? These generally work together, and there's a whole bunch of properties here, right? And typically this is where you're going to customize your material. So let's go ahead and get started here by making probably the easiest material to make, which is a red shiny metal. Okay, so to make a red shiny metal, I'm simply just going to right click on my mouse here, and it's going to pull up all the different things that I can use to create materials, right? So much here. We're just going to start off simple here and grab what's called a constant 3 vector. Okay, this is generally what I would use to create a color. Let's see here. Yeah, so it'd be constant 3 vector. And if you didn't want to create it this way, if you want to just create it a different way or a shortcut way, you can also hold 3 on your keyboard and then left click, and that will pull up the same node here. Now, for those of you who don't know, whenever you create a color inside of a game engine or pretty much any computer software, for example, it's generally made up of 3 main colors. Those 3 main colors are going to be red, green, and blue. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull up a color picker here real quick so we can see what I'm talking about. Right, so this color here, whatever color I'm creating, is always going to be generally a mixture of how much red is in it, how much green is in it, and how much blue is in it. And essentially a color, for example, like yellow, is a mixture of red and green. And you can actually see the percentages of each one right here. right? There's actually the percentage of each red, green, and blue in the color, and then all together it's going to make this. Not only is that generally what's there, but typically as well, in most game engines, you'll have what's called an alpha. An alpha describes how transparent or the opacity of the material, right? So generally speaking, that's how it's done. A color is generally described with one group of three numbers, optionally a fourth number to describe transparency. So that's essentially what this is, and if I double click in here, you'll even see that same setup here as well. If I go ahead and type in 1 for red, I get all red. If I come here and do all 1 for green, I will get green. And if I do all 1 for blue, I'll get the color blue. And then of course I can start mixing. So if I did all red and all green, I would of course get what we would expect here, no blue, I would get yellow. Right? And then of course I can then take this and drag it in and connect it just like that, and I would get the color I would like. And as you can see, this updates in real time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and double click on this here, and we're just going to make this red, just like so. Okay, so here is our nice red material. Let's go ahead and see how I would then apply that to a mesh. So to apply this material to a mesh is pretty straightforward. All you're going to do is simply open up the content drawer, grab on the material, and drag it into the scene, and voila, you have created your very first material. Congratulations. Okay, so as I said before, this is the shader. It describes the material, how it acts and how it works and how it looks, and then this is how you would apply it. And as you can see, it now has that material, or this specific material, in its material component. Okay, so let's look at what some of these other properties do here. Okay, couple of the properties that are really fun to work with are going to be the metallic, specular, and roughness. Okay, so let's just read each one what they do. Essentially, the metallic controls how metal-like it is, how much of a metal it's going to act like, and typically this is how it is going to reflect with the light, and also just how it works with other textures as well. Sometimes you'll notice that this will make a material darker the more metallic it is. There's a lot of things that the metallic can do, and especially at least when I worked with the Unity game engine, this was a property I used to manipulate all the time to make textures blend better together. So this is one of the nicer properties that you can generally use. Specular changes the amount of non-metallic versus metallic surface is actually being used. So if I want this to be really metallic, I can actually automate, or say I want some of this to be super metallic and some of this not to be super metallic. Generally, this also describes how much light is going to go through a surface as well, which kind of ties into what is roughness as well. So you may not know this, but in physics, there's this thing called an IOR, which stands for index of refraction, right? The more light reflects a specific thing, right, or more material reflects light, right, the more shiny it's going to look and the more glass-like it's going to look. If it's really reflective, it's going to shine back a whole bunch of light. And if a lot of light passes through the material and it doesn't really reflect very much, right, then it's not going to look very shiny. It's going to look kind of like dirt, very dull, maybe like a rock, right? So that's pretty much what you have here. This material, or like smoothness, is how much it's going to be reflecting light, right? So typically these kind of will all work hand in hand here. And as you can see, they all tell you exactly what they take here. They take a value between 0 and 1, which is going to be a simple number or a constant. So I'll just type in here constant, and as you can see, constant is here. If I want to pull up that constant without doing that, I can also just hold 1 on my keyboard and left click, and constants will pop up here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in 0 for all these values here so you can see exactly what happens. And just like as you may expect, it's going to be boom. I'm going to go ahead now. Let's get that one. It's going to be very shiny, right? And I believe, let's come here. Yeah, that's pretty much what we would expect, is a super duper shiny object, right? So I've made it have a lot of reflectiveness, right? And I can also automate how metal-like it is to make it even more shiny, right? And as you can see, it's super reflective at this point, right? So let's go ahead and now see how this affects our material when I click save here. And as you can see, it's now reflecting the sky. And although I didn't change the base color of this material, you can clearly see how these properties affect the object. Okay, so that's again just looking at some of the basics here of materials. For most of you, this hopefully may be a review. If not, I always like to kind of show the basics here of how these materials work. Okay, all right, last thing for this video is we are going to look at how you can import specific textures into UEFN. It's actually fairly straightforward. So believe it or not, there's already a lot of textures kind of pre-built in here for you. Generally, you're going to use the what's called texture sample node to grab specific textures, and you can click here, and as you can see, you have a whole bunch of textures kind of already built in for you. So I can grab this texture, for example. We'll duplicate this again. I'm going to come here, grab this texture, right? And I can actually even drag these into the nodes here. And as you can see, it already kind of generates like a texture for me, right? And then I can come here and start to change some of the values for like the metallic, for example, and the roughness if I want this to have a specific look to it, right? If I come here, I set this to 0, it's going to be super shiny. Now it's going to be almost like a metallic reflective wood. As you can see, if I don't want it to have that much reflectiveness, I can set it to like something less, right? But now it looks like maybe the wood is tempered, right? So this is kind of how you can alter stuff and use some pre-built textures that are already built in for you as well when doing your materials here. And of course, when I click save here, you'll see that it is updated to that. Cool, cool. So that's how you can use textures, just generic textures. Let's look at how you can grab textures from an online website. So typically what I'll do is I'll just type in PBR materials. There are 1,000,001 sites that have materials for you to use. We'll just go ahead and go with freepbr.com. Generally, you do want physically based rendering textures because generally those texture maps that you're going to get here are going to match to the nodes in Unreal a little bit better. Okay, so let's go ahead and come in here and let's just grab something from ground. Let's say this rocky dune, for example. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and click on this guy here. It's loading up, and as you can see, I have a UE here, which stands for Unreal Engine. You have BL, which is for Blender, and then Unity, which is for obviously Unity. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on this, and as you can see, it's downloaded that zip file. All I need to do really to add this to my scene here is this too. Open this folder. Boom. I'm just going to go ahead and extract all. You can extract all, or I'm just going to drag it onto my desktop because I typically like to have things just on my desktop. Maybe not the best thing to do, but hey, it works. Boom. All right, got that on my desktop now. Cool, cool. All right, should be right here. We would go ahead and unzip it by right clicking and doing extract all. There it goes. As you can see, it's right here. Here's the extracted file, and I'm just going to drag that out to my desktop. Boom. All right, so now that I have the extracted file, I can now open my editor, and all I need to do to import these materials is actually very easy. You're simply just going to drag these textures into your engine just like so. Should be not a zip file. Here we go. We'll just grab the textures. Boom. There we go. And as you can see, it has imported all of those textures into my thing here. And I'm generally going to grab all these textures here and group them together in a folder by right clicking here. And there should be a create folder. Oh, maybe not. All right, new folder. What is this? Rocky Dune. So we'll call this Rocky underscore Dune underscore textures. Boom. Okay. All right. Grab all the textures here. To grab the textures here, I'm just holding Control and clicking. Boom. Okay. Now I can come in here. Here's the textures. I'm just going to go ahead and right click and create a new material, call it M underscore Rocky Dunes. Bam. And go ahead and open up that shader graph. I'm going to close this for now. Okay, or reopen my shader graph. Now to actually apply these textures here, I'm just going to hold here and click my control key, and then I'm just going to drag them out just like so. And now I can actually start applying these textures to the shader graph. So a lot of people, when they see this, they really freak out and they're like, oh my god, this seems super complicated. What do I do? It's not as bad as you think. Typically, all you're going to do is just click on here and just read what it says to plug it into. And if you can't find the node, then just don't plug it in, right? So for example, height map, this would generally be used to create a normal map, but we already have a normal map, so we actually don't need this. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that. This is the AO, stands for ambient occlusion. So this is going to go into the ambient occlusion. Boom. This is the roughness, so I'll go ahead and drag this to roughness. This is the normal, as it says right here, so I'll drag this into the normal. Normal maps almost always look like this, by the way, so I can almost always just tell them normal because it looks like this. Let's see, this is the metallic mapping, so this is going to go into the metallic, and then this is the base color, so it's going to go in just like that. And as you can see, there we have it. We have our nice little generated material here, and it looks pretty nice. So let's go ahead and just apply this. I'm going to go ahead and save, and of course, if I ever needed to find it, watch how easy it is. I can just type in m underscore, and it pulls up all my materials. And this is why you want to prefix things, just like I showed you. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and click on this guy and drag it in, and voila. That is how you can grab a material that is from an external website and apply it to your scene, just like that. And it looks, it looks okay. Obviously, there's some things I'll change about it, but that's not the point of this video. All right, cool. So that is just the basics. I'm gonna do probably quite a few videos on materials because I think they're one of the most dynamic things, and it really, if you master materials, it's really what takes your level design from okay, you're kind of good at this to wow, because that's really one of the big skill areas because not a lot of people really understand the shader graph, and there's just so much you can do there. Okay, so don't worry, this was more of an introduction. In the next video, we're going to cover material instances, and then I'm going to show you a lot of my favorite material making tricks inside of just Unreal Engine, UEFN, and just in general, because the shader graph is one of those universal things that kind of exists in most 3D softwares. So if this video helped you in any ways, please like and subscribe, and thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.